Tatiana, thank you. Come on up, Trent. So at Trimble, we think about this space in sort of two areas. One is cadastral data collection and processing, which encompasses what our first three speakers talked about. We talked about GNSS corrections. We talked about data collection with a set of hardware and software, much like that Trimble has. And then we talked about use of satellite imagery. Now we're moving on to an area that we call land information management that deals more with, once you've collected all of that data, putting it into a database management system for registry and cadastre. So Trent Larson is going to present. Trent is from Medici Land Governance. Medici Ventures has a number of ventures in the blockchain space. Those of you who attended last year know that there were a lot of presentations on blockchain, and I will tell you that not all of them had a lot of detail. This year I was excited to see what kind of presentations we would see in terms of whether it's new pilots, more don't show your notes. Don't show your notes. So I'm excited to see what Trent's got from Medici Land Governance. He's going to talk about a project that they did on systematic titling in Zambia. Take it away, Trent.
Thank you. Thank you. And as you can tell, this is a very different topic from the three before, so I hope you'll still stay and learn a little bit, and hopefully we'll collaborate together in the future. I am talking about deploying titling and some customary land registration ideas that we've come up with and we've done some development on, and how we're looking at deploying those, and some lessons that we've learned from some previous deployments. I've been doing this work with Chris Chrysostom. Raise your hand, Chris. Is the other name on. And the title, and we are from Medici Land Governance here in Utah in the United States. So I've got three sections of this talk. The first is, can you hear me okay? Sorry, should I be standing right here? Okay, all right. So first I'll go over the concept, and that's going to be a good half of my talk to explain the blockchain principles that we have and how we're going to show land registration on them. Then we'll talk about the system and the design that we have, and finish up with lessons that we've learned. So first, the concept. Medici's core value number one is this, that we're focused on the individuals that we're targeting, the individual land owners and stakeholders. So at the bottom we say, well, businesses and government institutions are important stakeholders. Helping individuals secure their land rights is our top priority. So we start with the individuals, but we want to use that to also be able to reflect what is held in customary land and group ownership. So, in one sentence, the concept is to give more validity to individual claims and confirmations of other claims. And so together, this establishes the community claims because you have a network of assertions and confirmations. So, just from the starting, we have, say, an individual who can draw out boundaries for their particular plot of land and then sign it. So this is representing a cryptographic signature where they would have keys on their phone, and that's used to create a payload that's sent to a blockchain to record that plot of information, and may have a random ID that's assigned to them. To then have customary ownership, say we want group ownership, we can represent that if we have others that are in the community that are supporting that particular claim. So these are confirmations of someone else's claim. And then when you get a whole community where everyone is supporting one another's claims, then you can see how that becomes a network, and you can see the support within that network for that particular claim. So let me now tell you about the initial work we have done. First, in Zambia, we've done a systematic titling project where we've gathered data for 56,000 titles, and we have all of that ready to be accepted into the land administration system and then published onto a blockchain where we'll publish public parts of that. And as I said, we'll publish the final title summary. And so at the lowest level, that data may just be the boundary data. It may just be the geographic data for that plot and a random ID for the person, if we don't want to give away a lot of information about that individual or their holdings. Now, Wyoming, I bring this up, this is not your typical land and poverty situation, but this is where we are recording all the holdings on a chain. And we're doing this in Teton County, where all of the information for that parcel that's in the county recorder is being recorded. So it includes names and addresses and all kinds of information. So that's, you know, a lot of information that's being recorded, but there's a variation there. So we might, in some cases, record very little, just the minimal amount, to be able to, for someone to prove that they have that ownership, versus more correlation, a lot of data that we may publish. So the first use case of actually having individuals support each other's claims would be with enumerator surveys. So we've gone to Zambia, and the first step was for enumerators to go out and take a survey of house by house, the people's information. And then after that, have a public gathering where there's printed maps and printed lists of what neighbors are holding, and people manually review those. So obviously that is one case where that could be done in an app on the ground. Instead of having those maps, okay, go in to review that information on an app instead, where you can see maybe limited amount of your neighbor's claims, and then you can go ahead and approve that. Say, yes, I agree that that is boundaries, or dispute that. And so that is a claim or an attestation that you might want to make public in that situation, so that then it could be resolved by common authority. So these confirmations and these claims stored with basic information on a blockchain, because it is data that people will want to have publicized. So now let's switch to another use case. These are pictures from Peru, where we have gone and visited a village, and they have books. And this is whole lists of individuals, and you've got either their fingerprints or their signatures saying that, okay, this piece of our community is held by this particular person. So one by one you could see who is out there. Now, Peru is a better case because there's a lot more smartphone penetration in Peru. And so these communities, even if they share their phones, you know, there's the ability to take cryptographic keys on a mobile device to be able to sign that claim. And again, that network together, you can support each other's claims, and then others from outside can see some evidence of what the ownership really is, even if we want to aggregate it at the larger level. This is a further use case where, note that as you have those claims together and support each other's claims of ownership, you've naturally got a network of IDs on the chain, maybe even published individuals, and those can be then used to assert some authority for one of those people. Maybe it's a CLS, that Customary Land Secretariat, who is going to have some authority from then on to confirm in special cases, maybe a transfer or a death or something like that. And so that may be one additional way to attest a particular kind of role in that community. So that's the basics of the concept. So now I want to go into lessons that we've learned from the systems that we've built and their design. First of all, where does it work? You don't want to apply blockchain to everything. It does work for data that you want to be public, and data where the exposure to everyone in the world is acceptable. Anything that's private data, do not put it on a blockchain. And our rule is, even if it's encrypted, we shy away from it because encryption can be broken. So there's no problem with pointing pointers to private data that's off-chain. Also, if there's frequent transactions on a chain, we're talking about public blockchains at this point. You may have heard about permissioned private chains, and there may be some use cases for those. I've heard of them, but it's not as compelling, especially for this purpose, which is data that we want to make public. But if you have a lot of transactions, then there's a possibility for fees, network maintenance costs. Those become higher with frequent transactions. Land is a good case where there's infrequent transactions. Even supporting each other's claims, it doesn't happen every month even. So this is a good use case for it. The data elements, you want to be careful of putting those on the chain, because if we were to say use one address for my home, and then somebody were to go in and get a loan, and they were to go and make a purchase or deal with some other government entity with the same ID, there's a possibility of correlating and targeting exactly who that person is, and you want to shy away from that. There's threats of mass detection, mass surveillance that can be leveraged by larger actors, and that actually takes away some of the power of the individual in those cases, so it's something to be careful of. So let me address the two cases that we've deployed. One is this blockchain as backup, which we've done in Wyoming and we're going to do in Zambia. The benefits of this is that it's an open source solution on a public ledger that is widely known. So BTC-derived, Bitcoin-derived networks are really well known, and it's well known how to, the mining algorithms and things like that, how the workflow goes. And so those allow more access to the data over time. If our company goes away, then it's still an open resource to know how to read that data. Also, an open source network where you've got some exchange of value going on helps, because then you have more confidence that that network is going to live on into the future. So networks with coins are actually, there's a benefit to those. Now, in this particular approach where all of these records are being written by one registrar, it's just written by one entity. And so databases are often simpler for that kind of thing, but there's still this use case for the public good to have it on the chain. The other case is for individual claim and confirmations. This is one where we've started building the app, it's not deployed yet. But the benefits of this kind of approach is that it truly is open for anyone to participate in. And so I would envision that some of the human management systems that we have nowadays are going to be replaced by individuals making claims and then seeing what the network is when they have to make a transaction, when they have to go find out who the owner is. And mobile keys on mobile devices will enable this. Now, that's also the downside of this. This technology is not widespread, especially in Africa. And so it's better in Latin America. That's just a fact, but we're still pushing forward because we believe that that will get adopted over time. The other downside of this is that the truth isn't just a simple lookup into the database to get one answer. It does require some analysis of the network, because you might have competing claims that are just thrown on there by anyone else because it is a public network. And that's okay. It's okay because if you are interested in making a transaction or a deal with someone in that area, you're not going to just trust data, because bad data can be put out there just as well as good data. You're going to go maybe through another channel just to verify who is the start of that network, people on the ground. And so that inroad can give you access to know, okay, this part of the network is what I trust. And maybe that tells you who the other trusted certifiers are on the network. Spam is another possible attack for this kind of network. I see people smiling there. That's, yeah, they understand how that goes. So let me just finish up with a couple of lessons that I have learned, and I'm an engineer in our company, so this is definitely an engineering background. And my first lesson is to get through the whole process that you're working on as soon as possible. That helps you learn technology shortcomings, of course, but also anything that's policy-wise going to be in the way at the last minute, where we find ourselves being stopped sometimes because one particular individual has a requirement that we didn't anticipate. So if you can, this is I'm talking specifically about Zambia, where we have our first titles just about ready to be printed. We've got all the data. We just have that first title that has to be finished. Then take time to train and practice. Some of the initial work we did was just on organizing and documenting, and that's helpful. But once you get into the field, then having people that you rely on that are actually practicing, and then you can iterate your processes while maintaining your documents. It's a hard balance to strike, but you can't just rely on the documentation. Printed maps and lists, there's downsides with that. They're hard to search in the field. Of course, we found that if the app doesn't have all the features that they need in the field, then that's just a non-starter. So helps to have different approaches there. And especially if you're using user devices, that almost becomes a tech support issue in the field, which you do not want. You want it to be as simple as possible. Cryptographic tools are really in their infancy today, even in the US. So that's a shortcoming. But we are betting on mobile. We are going to keep growing our capability for mobile devices. And so finally, one of the reasons we're betting on mobile is that we see policymakers believing in this. We have Rwanda, who has a public key infrastructure available for all of their citizenry, and we're going to start building on that. We haven't deployed the individual claims and confirmations, but we will, and there, of course, will be a collaboration with all the players when that kind of initiative happens. And again, I'm going to finish with that statement: get the first one through the process as soon as possible. Get to production right away, and then iterate. I feel like that is us as a technology company. We learn by continually iterating, getting it to the people that we serve. So again, we're from Medici Land Governance. In fact, there's a few people here. If you have questions, whatever from Medici, raise your hand, please, so that if anyone else has questions. We believe in open data, open protocols. And again, we're here to serve the individuals who are the poorest in these lands and help them get secure land tenure. So, thank you very much.